and I want to welcome you all today to the SUNY Online Teaching webinar. My colleague Rob Pierkowski is going to be presenting today on tips for ensuring authentic online assessment and really taking a look at rubrics and the value that rubrics provide to us as educators and to our students. So I'm going to turn it over to Rob, and I would ask if you all could please introduce yourself in the chat so we know where you're from and what your role is on your campus. That's really helpful to us. So thanks so much. Rob, take it away.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. We just passed the morning. I'm coming to you from just outside Albany, New York. I am the Assistant Director for SUNY Online Teaching, and I'm here to talk to you today about rubrics and authentic online assessment. And I am just a little background on me. I am an instructional designer. I have been since 1999, and I taught for 16 years at Cayuga Community College. I taught online French. And I'm here to talk to you today about authentic online assessment. I get to train faculty quite a bit. So these days I spend my days in Brightspace training faculty, and in part about rubrics, but mostly how to use the Brightspace interface. So what I'd like to talk to you about today is assessing students online, and there are plenty of resources available to you. All you'd have to do is Google authentic online assessment, and I'm sure you get over 1 million hits. So I'm going to try not to give you too many resources. Really, I'm going to talk a lot about rubrics during this presentation. And so just zooming out for a second, when considering online authentic assessment, I would like to use the Oscar rubric standard number 31 as sort of a launch point for this presentation today. And so zooming out, before we get into rubrics, what I would propose to you in terms of approaching this topic with faculty is just to think about if you're looking at a course, or if you're a faculty member yourself, if you're looking at your own course, think about to what extent do the learning activities and the course objectives themselves aim at emulating real world applications of your discipline. And that in itself is sort of a good starting point for a conversation about authentic assessment. Do the learning activities aim in that direction? And in the spirit of Oscar, the Oscar rubric is the Open SUNY course quality rubric, for those of you who don't know. So if you start this conversation again with faculty, if you're an instructional designer, or with yourself looking at your own course, this sort of gets to the point of authenticity. Are my students engaged in activities that are really aiming at the real world applications of the discipline? And so how do you do that in a course? Well, you look at the course objectives, you look at the learning activities and the assessment methods, and ask that same question: to what extent are these real world problems that I'm engaging my students with, real world issues in the discipline? It's a good place to start in terms of continuously improving our instruction, or if we're building a course from scratch, to to aim in that direction. And then we want to ask ourselves, to what extent do these align? Right? Because if the course objectives and the learning activities are all set and look right, do they align with each other? And most especially for today, do they align with the assessment methods that I'm going to use? And that's where rubrics really come into play. A rubric, so where do you start? A good place to start is at the rubric, and this sort of speaks a little bit to backward design, whereby um, we create our evaluation instruments first, and then we design backwards into the instruction, particularly into the learning activities and the course objectives. Now, for many courses, the course objectives are set, and we could do a whole workshop or a series of workshops on building course objectives. So today, what I'm going to propose, and I've done this with several faculties and with several faculty, as well as with departments. Building a rubric is an excellent intellectual exercise for discussing what's going to be assessed in particular for particular student assessments. So what in particular is going to be looked at? What is the criteria for assessment? Also, it sort of aims squarely at what type of feedback I'm going to provide for students on what they submit to me. And this building a rubric can take a little bit of time, but the time you spend building one will be saved exponentially during the grading process. And I've had lots of experience building rubrics with faculty, and it really comes out as a very positive experience, because clarifying the expectations for students is always a great goal for instructors. Students point to clear expectations as a very effective practice in online instruction. So again, in the spirit of continuous improvement, we can always look at what we put in front of students and always ask ourselves, can this be improved? And a rubric goes a long way in, again, clarifying what we expect from students and how they are going to be evaluated. So here, what I have in front of you right now is a definition of a rubric. My definition of a rubric. I may have pulled it from somewhere, but as I'm going to show you how to build a rubric during this presentation in Brightspace. So I think if this definition needs more, there will be more to come. But in essence, what a rubric does is it lays out the criteria and the expectations for students on individual assignments, and then serves as the grading instrument for those assignments. Rubrics can be used, and one thing that should be included here, I meant to include it, is online discussions. Online discussion rubrics are extremely helpful in assessing the quality and the quantity of student submissions, and can provide really pointed and relevant feedback to students when used as an evaluation instrument. So here are just some bullet points on how rubrics can help instructors. One of perhaps the strongest appeal is bullet point number 2. There is that once instructors see how rubrics are used in the grading process, there is usually buy-in at that point. So when I present rubrics to instructors or propose them, usually what I'll do is I'll show them an example, and I'll show you an example as well during the presentation today of how a rubric is used in the grading process. And that usually attracts instructors to rubrics. But I would like to just address the last bullet point here in terms of helping instructors. I find it an extremely stimulating exercise with faculty when they agree to embark on building a rubric with me. Because again, it really zeroes in on that very sort of poignant uh, um, point in time in teaching where we can provide feedback to students. And so it really gets to the heart of the teaching process. And when students when instructors use rubrics, students get very pointed feedback on very specific criteria on a particular assessment. So as this slide indicates, when a student can see a rubric in advance of submitting an assignment, he or she can use that in terms of judging whether he or she is meeting the expectations of the instructor on a particular assignment. And that is extremely helpful. But what students say over and over again at when we have student panels at conferences and those types of activities is when they understand the expectations of the instructor, they are much more likely to succeed in the course, and rubrics go a long way in clarifying those expectations. So what I propose is when I come to faculty with the effort of creating a rubric, is I ask faculty, I have this little alignment worksheet, and this will be provided to you. It's obviously nothing that complicated. But what I do when I sit down with faculty to create a rubric is I look at the course learning, the stated learning objectives in the course, and then I go right to the actual assessments, and I look at the instructions for the assessments. And I look at them very carefully with faculty to understand what is initially communicated to students before an assignment. This can usually be in, sometimes it's in the syllabus if it's a long-term project or something like that. Sometimes it's on the assignment itself. But I usually ask the faculty member to guide me to where those instructions are. And then what the process, really is about aligning the rubric with what's already stated. And so, usually I'll fill out here's an example of what I have teased out from, this was from a course for observation. This is an example of teasing out the learning objective and outcome, and looking at the wording very carefully, and then looking at the actual assessment instructions that's aimed at that learning objective, and not really evaluating the alignment at this point. Really what it is creating rubric criteria that aligns with both the assessment and the stated learning outcome. And so what this is really helpful in is about faculty looking at the words, the actual wording of their assignments, and this is where the intellectual exercise begins. teasing out, okay, what's important? What are you going to, and so as an instructional designer, I do all this work. I do this work beforehand so I can come to the faculty member with some proposed criteria for a rubric. And we have a conversation around, how important is the word count? Because I see that stated in the instructions. How important is originality? And once we both start understanding how much weight the proposed criteria will carry, we're on our way to creating a rubric, because the criteria all the way on the right is really the crux of what the expectations are for this assignment. So, and of course, I ask faculty to add to whatever criteria I have, teased out of the learning objective and assessment instructions. And we have a conversation around how things, can be tweaked and how things can be clarified. Sometimes being concise is a real good way to go. A rubric itself is quite concise. And so this is all about, creating a list of criteria that we're going to put out in front of students and tell students this is what this assignment is going to be graded on. So, the implicit instruction is to use the rubric as a checklist, or either as a mental checklist or as a physical checklist, to make sure that you've hit on all this criteria. Because again, when a rubric is used, it is really only this criteria that is being evaluated through the instrument. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to show you how to build a rubric in Brightspace and show you the process. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to exit out of my presentation for a split second, and I have my Brightspace course here for us to look at. And so this is a course I use in training. As I mentioned, I was an instructor of, I may have mentioned that I was an instructor of French at Cayuga Community College. So I usually work inside this context here. But as Brightspace goes, just a few things different than Blackboard, which was our SUNY preferred learning management system. All the reports that I've heard, and I've been training faculty in Brightspace for quite a while, is that rubrics come over very cleanly from either Moodle or from Blackboard. And so that's the good news on migration. But if you're brand new to Brightspace, the way we find rubrics here, as we're looking at the home page of a course, is we go to the course administration link, and we down in the course administration link there, I have it separated by name. We have rubrics here. There's a section for rubrics. So when I click on that, we can see that I've created some rubrics here during my training sessions. Some of these are complete, some of them are not. So I will show you a completed rubric. I have a discussion rubric here. And so I can use the preview option to just look at how my discussion rubric is created. So for most rubrics, the criteria is always on the left. So here I have the criteria for participation in this particular discussion. Maybe all the discussions in my course are ideas, arguments, and analysis worth 30 points. Connection to the course materials, the contribution to the learning community, the writing quality of the submissions, and the required posting / timeliness of those submissions. So when we create a rubric here in Brightspace, usually the first step to creating a rubric is, again, coming up with this criteria. What criteria are we going to assess? And then the process is really to create, these are called achievement levels. So for each criteria, to what extent does the student meet the expectations that I've put forth? And those expectations are usually stated in what I call the exemplary column. When I start off a brand new rubric, you'll see that all these columns need to be filled in. This is essentially how I've built it. And one note, if for those of you who have seen rubrics or researched rubrics, they almost always come out as a grid like this, but not always. Sometimes they're kind of stated in a more narrative form. But what I like to do is put the exemplary first, and the unsatisfactory last. And you'll see some rubrics where this is reversed, where unsatisfactory, and we have to sort of read across to get to exemplary. But I prefer exemplary first because students read from left to right. I'd like them to see my full expectations first. So for each piece, once we establish the criteria in Brightspace, what we do is we sort of lend the weight to the exemplary performance level on that piece of criteria. So, and I'll show you this when we build a new rubric. But usually the exercise in the longest time is spent when building a rubric on establishing this exemplary criteria for each this exemplary performance level for each piece of criteria. So in other words, this is where we really drill down, and I say, okay, so we've established that ideas, arguments, and analysis are our main criteria. What are we going to say about exemplary performance on this particular piece? And so here we have ideas expressed in discussion posts include original thoughts, substantial depth, and are relevant to the topic. Okay, I don't need to read you the whole thing. But viewpoint shows strong logical thinking, reasoning. And so this once in the process of creating a rubric is such that I usually ignore these other levels here, and I go through each piece of criteria, and we establish what is the exemplary performance on each criteria before moving over to these other pieces. And because once we establish the exemplary performance on the criteria, and the point, and again, the points will indicate how much weight is on this. This is a 100-point assignment, by the way. Then what we do, once we have those exemplary pieces in place, then what we do is we move over to the lower achievement levels. So short of this exemplary performance on ideas, arguments, and analysis, what is this proficient going to look like? And so usually what we do, and in most of the rubrics I've seen, we riff off of the exemplary performance, and the lower levels of achievement are usually paler versions of the exemplary performance. So here, as an example, include original thought, substantial depth, and are relevant to the topic. Here are mostly substantive and relevant to the topic, some original thought. Here, now have under needs improvement, a minimal understanding of the discussion topic, comments are general in nature. So I essentially use the same sort of talking points for each criteria from the exemplary column, but I lower the achievement level on each, riffing off of, again, this exemplary column. So that's usually how we create these lower levels of achievement. Now, this is, by the way, this is the actual feedback that students are going to get as well. It's not just a statement of quality. When I use this as the evaluation instrument, this is the exact feedback that students are going to get. So again, hopefully, we can create a rubric where these are very distinct from each other, however, centering around the same points here. So unsatisfactory would be ideas expressed lack an understanding of the discussion topic, comments are irrelevant, off topic, etc. So that's usually the exercise in creating this. Again, we establish our criteria. We then establish our preferred performance on this, our expectations, if you will, and then we create both the point values and the lower levels of achievement. My recommendation to faculty when building their first rubric is usually keep these the number of these achievement levels low. I've used rubrics on rubrics that just have maybe 2 criteria. As an example, I have a pronunciation rubric that really just has 2 pieces of criteria: comprehensibility and enunciation. And those those only have 3 achievement levels. So this does not have to be elaborate. And if you think that it's going to take a lot of thought in the grading process, it doesn't. It actually expedites the grading process. And let me show you what that's about. First, I want to show you how to actually create a brand new rubric. In Brightspace, again, I clicked on the course administration button, menu item, excuse me, and I navigated to the rubrics section of Brightspace in my course. And right up top, we have new rubric. Brightspace, by the way, is a very transparent type of interface in that there aren't that many questions that arise when you arrive at a screen. There's not that many things to click on, and it's a huge asset for this learning management system. So I click on new rubric here, and I give it a title. So I'm just going to type in a title here so I know what this is about. And this is what it looks like. This is what it looks like. I can change the status of this, by the way. I can just put this in draft form, which probably makes sense. Just because I'm working on it. They do take a little bit of time to create a rubric. And so, for authentic assessment, let's see. By default, Brightspace creates what are called analytic rubrics. We're just going to stick with that for a second. One thing that I would recommend is custom points. I think that's a better bet because, as you can see, it creates fields for each level of achievement. And I can right away, I can determine how many levels of achievement I want by just using this garbage pail or recycling pail to get rid of any levels of achievement. I can use this plus sign to add another one. And as you can see, it adds another level there. So I'm just going to get rid of that just for a second. There we go. All of these fields, by the way, are made to be edited. So so here's where I, as an example, okay, I don't expect everyone to use the same wording I use, but this is where I put in my my achievement levels. Um, and so there are my achievement levels, and here is where I put in my criteria. And so for authentic assessment, maybe alignment is going to be my my first piece of criteria. Maybe for second, maybe I'm going to look at the real world applications. And then maybe here, use of examples. And so I'll leave that. If I want to add a criteria, I can do that. Okay, and maybe I can, do something like, for a lot of assignments, usage, of grammar or something like that, will be important. And then here in the exemplary column, as I mentioned, this is where I'm going to determine how many points that's going to be worth. So if this were out of 100 points, maybe alignment would be worth 30 points. Maybe real world application would also be worth 30 points. And use of examples may be worth 20. And maybe usage worth 20 as well, all to add up to 100 points. And at this point, this is where I start putting back the putting in. This is where it takes a little bit of time. So this is where, again, as intellectual exercises go, this is where the faculty member and I, or I as an instructor, will start drilling down and say, what do I mean by alignment? And so this is where, this is where I imagine, okay, this is exactly what I expect on this assignment in regard to alignment. And this is where I would start filling out what my expectation of exemplary performance would be on this criteria. And as I go across, one thing that you want to keep in mind is that, sometimes the line between exemplary and proficient can be rather thin. So when we consider, point values here for a proficient performance on this, really the question I ask is, how many points do I really want anybody to lose? So I would say something like, maybe 26 here. From exemplary to proficient, I wouldn't want students to lose that many. And then, to satisfactory, again, the point values based on 100 points, I wouldn't want anyone to lose that much. And then here, 0 points is of course kind of brutal here. So, maybe the most I'd want someone to lose on this particular piece of criteria would be, maybe 10 points. And so I start figuring all that out. And again, my first exercise is to do all of the exemplary columns at this point. And what do I really mean in terms of use of examples? Anytime we can put numbers or something easy to measure, always best. So use of examples, is prevalent in a lot of different types of assignments. So here I would put in, you used, and you can put in you, the second person. You used 6 to 8 examples, something like that. And so, and then the columns that follow would be you used 4 to 6 examples, you used 2 to 4 examples, you didn't use any examples, as we move across each column. So, so that is, how to create a rubric in Brightspace. Again, I don't have time to fill out all of these things here. What I would like to show you is how this is used in the grading process. So let me get to that right now. So I'm just going to jump back to my course. It's going to save it as a draft, by the way. Brightspace does a good job of doing that, of saving my things if I don't hit the save button, which is great. So where do I do my grading in Brightspace? So I can go to grades. What I like to do is I like to go to the quick eval. And what quick eval does for me in Brightspace is it aggregates all of the grading that I need to do. And so I have, I believe I have a rubric attached to this discussion. I'll show you how to attach a rubric in a second. But this is usually where faculty become really attracted to rubrics, and it's this grading process. So this is the grading form in Brightspace. And when I have a rubric attached to this discussion. And so one cool thing is that I can preview the rubric, or I can look at this rubric before I even go, just to remind me of what all of the criteria was, some of that. But usually in practice, since we create our own rubrics, we usually have a good understanding of them. And as the grading process goes too, if you have 10, 15, 20 students, usually you might have to remind yourself of the criteria for the first 2 or 3 students, and then it all kind of falls into place. So here I'm going to use my discussion rubric to grade. And so I read the submissions, and then during the grading process, I really, at this point, I just determine the proficiency level for each piece of criteria. So so here the Jane was proficient. Here she was exemplary. And the great thing about it is that Jane gets all of this feedback as I fill out this rubric. And when I submit her grade, so she was exemplary in her contribution to the learning activity. Her writing quality needs improvement. Her required postings were right on. And the grade drops in automatically. And if I want to put in any more feedback here, I can put in more feedback. In Brightspace, I can also, on each piece of criteria, I can, if I think that, well, it was almost exemplary, if she's somewhere in between, I can make a fine-tune adjustment on each piece of criteria. Okay, so 14 is the preset for this writing quality, but if she did just a little bit better, then needs improvement. Maybe 15 is better. So so in Brightspace during the grading process, if I were to labor over some of these numbers here, I could do that. I could just click right in here, and I can fine tune this the grading for this particular piece of criteria. But in general, what faculty love about this is really it's 5 clicks, and Jane gets 5 paragraphs of feedback. And I just as an instructor, I only had to click 5 times, and she gets very pointed feedback on what she created for me on this assignment. So I am just going to go back here. In terms of attaching a rubric to a particular assignment, that is fairly easily done. Let me show you how that is done. So I have some assignments here. So if I have, let's say, and I'll just pick one here. If I have here, I'm going to edit this assignment here. Under evaluation and feedback, this is the assignment form for Brightspace. I went to the assignment section to get into this form, and I chose edit for this particular assignment. Under evaluation and feedback, I have add rubric. And so I can create a new rubric right here, or I can add an existing rubric to this assignment. And so my rubrics load up. And so like here's my homework assignment rubric as an example. And when I add that, the rubric is now attached to this assignment. And I can save and close. Okay. So questions that you might have about this. Let me just get back to, is it attached to the student's view too? Excellent question. So let me go into the student view here. And so I know, oh, my modules are interesting. Okay. Just hold on for a second. I may have hidden a few modules here by accident. Come on. Yeah, so let me just unhide this module for a second. Yeah, okay. And let me go back to the student view. And so I know I have a rubric attached to an assignment in my first module. And so I'm going to refresh and hopefully see module 1. And I must have done something wrong. Let me just get into module 1 and make it visible for you so you can see what it's like for a rubric to be attached, what the student view is like. I'm just gonna take out all these dates here. And as a student, I should be able to see these. And so this is what it's going to look like for students. So here is a discussion forum, the one that we just looked at. And so hopefully I will see as a student if there is, I think I have to click into the discussion. Yeah, down at the bottom here, there is a discussion rubric. And again, as a student, I would see what all of my, grading criteria and performance levels are for this. I can print it as well. So the overall score, so let's take a look at that. Yeah, in the grading process, I know what you're talking about. To be perfectly honest, I have not investigated what that overall score is about, and because I do want to address the question. Well, I think I have to go to the grading process actually. So there is, something called an overall score. I have like adjusted it and stuff. I'm not sure what it does, and let me show you what I mean, because it was visible while we were doing it. So we have total score here, and that's when I went through and I clicked on each criteria. But then back here, there's an overall score, and I apologize. I wish I knew more what this was about. but I'm just not sure what this little scoring piece here is, what it really does. So I'm reading through the chat here. Okay. So I apologize. I don't have a clear understanding of what this overall score actually does. So I'll have to research that on my own. So Erin, was there a question that you saw in the chat?
It did. It was up a little bit above Lois when you attached to the student view. There was a comment and a question. So I can read it for you. Tammy says, currently when we have a discussion with an initial post due Wednesday and response post by Sunday, for example, in Moodle, we can't just grade the rubric on Wednesday for that section and save it. You have to provide something in each box in order to save it. So she waits until she's ready to post all of the criteria.
Right.
In Brightspace, will it let you grade part of the assignment and save it as a draft? So for the initial post, and then you can go back and finish grading when the rest of it has been. Do you know if you can save it in between?
Yeah, let me check that out. So let's go in.
Thanks.
And then, so let's say, just the first piece of criteria was about the initial post. And then if I save a draft of this, what does that do? Evaluation saved as draft. Yeah, it tells me that I've just saved it as a draft. So that's obviously much different than publishing out. So I would say yes. Also in Brightspace, since we're talking about discussions, you are able to grade by post in Brightspace. And so, when creating a discussion, you are able to create to grade by post, as we were able to in both Angel and, for those of you who remember, Lotus Notes. But I just want to show you where that is. This is the form for discussions, and it's under the assessment piece here. I just have to choose a form. Under the assessment piece, come on. And here at the very end here, allow assessment of individual posts, and you can select a calculation method and do that as well. You can also, even if you assess by assessment of individual posts. So I say that because it's a much different way of going about grading discussions, whereby as the posts come in, you can then grade just that post, and so you can grade while students are participating in the activity, and I think that offers up a lot of advantages. Okay, other questions?
Yep, another question about changing the total. Can you manually change the total?
Yeah, you can manually change the total when you, I guess I'll save it. Let me just show you where that is.
And while you're doing that, Rob, there were some comments from others who have discovered that, you can do that, what you were trying to do there. You can save it and then publish it later.
Yeah, you can save the draft.
Yeah.
Great, thanks, Erin. Let me just get back to that grading form so I can show you how to bypass. You can change the total at any time. Sorry, quick eval. And so when I'm grading a discussion here, I keep picking on Jane. I filled out the rubric for this, if you remember, and her overall grade was 94, but right here, this is an editable field. So I can change the overall grade at any time. Let's not give her a 9 though. So there's that as well. And you have more feedback here that you can provide. Save the draft. That's cool.
So we have another question from Gary. Whether or not you might have any suggestions for authentic assessments of content-heavy courses. Gary teaches anatomy. They need to assess on bone names, muscle names, etc. Really content-heavy.
Yeah. So there's just a lot of recall that needs to happen. I would consider creating several rubrics, Gary. One for each. Maybe have a rubric template. But for since each piece of content includes many many pieces in itself, I would consider creating a rubric for each piece, like a rubric on bones, a rubric on arteries, and it doesn't have to have that many, again, it doesn't have to have that many performance levels. It may be very cut and dry as to how many how many bones I can identify. So it doesn't have to be, elaborate, if you will, because what I presented to you is relatively elaborate for a discussion. In a discussion, you are looking for several different things at once, but you don't have to have that many criteria. Sure. Good luck with it, Gary. But what I do want to underscore, since I have it up on the main screen, I do want to underscore the expediting the grading process. Okay, because while it's not about it's not about working less, it's about really getting through the grading, providing very pointed feedback to students, and then tending to other things in your course. Okay, and the links that I provided, there is on this particular page, there is a link to the Brightspace tutorial. I repeated that link right here. It's great tutorial on how to create rubrics. I think it's like less than 2 minutes, and it goes through the whole process of creating rubrics, and obviously you can play it over and over again until you get it. Any other questions?
I posted those links, Rob, right in the chat, and
Great.
for folks who want the rest of the presentation, that's the second to last slide there, or
Okay.
link. We also posted the link to the webinar recording, so today's session will be up on our website under the playlist tab, and you can also access past recordings there as well. So I thought I would, I'll pull up the slides so you can see what sessions we've had this fall. And if you are interested in our next session too, which will be, I think, December 9th, make sure here. Yep, December 9th. So there it is.
Thanks so much, Erin. I appreciate the opportunity to present.
Thanks, Rob. We always like to host you. We appreciate your insight. And I appreciate the folks, questions in the chat, the participation. It all helps us think through this. And the sharing is really great too, to understand how each of us approaches this. So we appreciate that. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. I will stop the recording, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.